Robin Zander, scene A1.
Hello and welcome back to Snafu. I'm Robin Zander, and each week on the podcast, I sit down with authors, executives, and entrepreneurs to talk about non-sales selling, influence, and persuasion. Today's guest is the author of the forthcoming book, Corporating, and my dear friend, Mandy Mooney. Mandy is the VP of Internal Comms at the Fortune 500 company Prologis. And in this conversation, we talk about her corporate career and how to build your own, how to balance personal and professional and show up a little bit more personally in the workplace, how to mentor people and get mentored, and how to keep pace with the rapid rate of change we find ourselves in today. Mandy is also a speaker at our upcoming Snafu conference, which is taking place at the Oakland Museum of California on March 5th. If you enjoy this conversation, I'd encourage you to check out the Snafu conference. Join Snafu, snafu.com to learn more. Please enjoy this wide-ranging conversation with my dear friend, Mandy Mooney. All right, Mandy, thank you for coming onto the pod today.
Thank you for having me, Robin. Good to chat with you.
Yeah, very much so. I want to start somewhere a little atypical, which is you've got young kids.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a fascinating career ranging from the performing arts to, VP of a name brand company doing interesting stuff, which we'll get into. But as somebody who doesn't have kids yet, and my fiance and I, as you know, want them eventually, what are the skills, whether you could go theater, you could go corporating, you could go everything, writing books, like what are the skills that you want your children to develop to stay resilient in the world and the world of work that they're going to grow up in, right? The meta skills that you think are important.
I love this question so much. I did not expect it to go here. So what a thrilling ride it has already been with you. And I really appreciate, Robin, something about you that I've noticed is that you tend to put things out there before they exist. Like even just the idea of like, I don't have children yet. So I think like that alone is a skill that I want to give my children, is to envision the end, believe that it will happen, and it is much more likely to happen. So maybe that's number one, is envision the possibilities and know that they are limitless if you believe them. And then another skill I think about a lot is independence. And honestly, I don't even know if I'm doing a very good job as a parent. I try to, but for example, I did their hair this morning. Can they brush their own hair? Yeah, probably. It won't look as cute, but they can do it. Putting their clothes on, asking strangers for questions that they have. Like my one daughter's a Girl Scout, and so she's learning the sales skills of going up to someone she doesn't know and asking if they will purchase Girl Scout cookies. That sort of independence, it builds confidence that you can get through the world, that you can figure anything out, whether it's how to brush your teeth and wash the dishes or bigger things that come in life later on, like how to handle tricky situations. So belief in yourself, I think that's tied for me in self-worth. And then also independence are two huge skills that I think about as being leading to success no matter what you decide to do with your career in life.
How do you teach self-belief? And for context, how old are your kids?
6 and 9. So I've got two girls and they're 6 years old, 9 years old. And how do you teach belief? Man, there are so many books written about this. What I found to be successful is a combination of the words that I use when I speak to them and the words that I encourage them to use when they talk about themselves. And so on my end, what I can control is things like, instead of saying, you look so pretty today, saying things like, wow, I love the creativity that you put into your outfit. Because the voice that I use, the words that I choose, they're going to receive that and internalize it. And that's the voice that they hear inside their heads. So me trying to, tell them that they are something doesn't mean they are that thing, but it is something that I think can instill confidence in a person, is hearing that somebody believes in you. And then in terms of their belief in themselves, we have a lot of conversations about this, about if a child comes home, I'm so stupid, I can't figure out this math problem. Oh, wow, that's something that we can figure out together. And the good news is I know that you are so smart and that you can figure this out. So let's work together to figure it out. So like kind of corrective language, if you hear something where they're going down a path. Or the other day I asked my daughter, I said, what's it like to be you? Like, what's it like to be inside your head? Like, and her first response was, well, you worry a lot. And I just thought, wow, that is so telling. Like, I was so glad I asked that question because I would have never anticipated that response. And so, asking questions, like as a parent, coming from a place of curiosity so that you can check in with your kid and kind of hear where they are in their journey of self worth and self identity.
You've mentored lots of people, and I would guess in your career, and we'll maybe start with what is it that you do? What is VP of internal comms mean? Tell us a little bit about your company. But the place that I'm going is as you're supporting the development of your two girls, right? How have you been supported, and how do you try to support others professionally in their career? I'll give a little context for I literally am just off an hour-long workshop for a group of professionals on how do you sell yourself? How do you ask for that promotion? How do you step forward and take that step? And I don't hold myself up as an expert, right? I literally have conversations with amazing people like you who have navigated corporate bureaucracies, who have navigated professional development, who have built relationships. And so, yeah, start with, what is it that you do? What does a VP of internal comms mean in your role? But then how have you gotten there, right? How have you built the network of people that have supported your professional growth over the years?
It's been a winding road. So I did not study internal communications. I discovered internal communications, and I I often think I might have the most fun job in the world. I mean, it can be stressful, and it can't, there are days where you want to bang your head against the wall, but by and large, I love my job. It is so fun. And what internal communications means is it's my responsibility to translate that company strategy into something that employees not only understand, but that they're excited about. So, for example, at the beginning of a year, a business always comes up with what is our business plan for, in this case, 2026. And so it's my job and my team's job to translate into something that the humans on the other end, those 2,800 employees who we're speaking to, they can understand what it means and they're excited by it. So my team, we span everything from the internal communications that you get via email, the PowerPoints that you see at global town halls, the speaking points that leaders use when they're trying to translate what we're doing to their own teams. And then also just infusing fun into the organization. So any big company typically has what's called an intranet. And an intranet is exactly what it sounds like. It is an intranet for internal folks. And so twice a week, we put out a new story related to culture, our customers, or innovation. And for us, I mean, we're really rolling with the punches here. Like, some of those stories are pre planned, and some of them, like yesterday, I woke up to a message from a senior leader saying, hey, have you seen one of our colleagues is doing 7 marathons in 7 days on 7 continents? This is insane. Like, why aren't we writing a story about it? And so, really quickly, 24 hours, we collect the content, we frame it in a way that's really exciting and really beautifully staged. And now it's up. It's up on our intranet. So, no 2 days are ever the same. Storytelling is a huge part of my job, but theater is a big part of my job too. And you and I are both thespians. So we come from theater backgrounds, you and I. And so I'm no stranger to the stage. And when it comes to preparing my leaders to get on stage and to translate that messaging, it's really fun because I'm the one who's coaching behind the scenes, like, don't do that weird thing with your hands. Make sure you're projecting your voice. Look at this camera and that one. There's a lot of theatrics involved in the presentation of that information.
Yep, 100%. Um, let's talk about, I mean, there's so much fun. When you describe the role, it sounds like a mix of HR and sales, right? It sounds like a pretty ideal, perfect intersection of those two, right? Is
Yeah.
supporting the development of the people internal to the company while
Mhm.
selling them on the company.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I love most about it is that you walk away from the end of the day feeling like you actually make a difference in people's lives. And part of how you do that is by making sure that they do have the information first and foremost, but also that they feel supported. So we're always behind the scenes, locked arm in arm with HR. So HR, for those who don't know, is human resources, and those are the people who support the people of a company. And, I know we'll talk about the book eventually, but I did write this book that is meant to serve as a guide for how to navigate internally. And part of that navigation is partnering with HR to figure out what are their learning and development opportunities. How do I give feedback? How do I become a better manager? And also building relationships that can help accelerate your own career, no matter what organization you're in. And you had asked earlier, Robin, about mentors, and I didn't answer your question, so now I want to. When I think about my own career, I said that internal comms wasn't where I started. I studied apparel merchandising, like of all things. I studied apparel merchandising and business because I got to, it's probably the middle of my sophomore year, and my counselor was like, Mandy, you're not going to graduate. You need to pick something. And so I went from pre-med to theater to journalism. I'm sure there were a few other ones in between, but apparel merchandising was interesting to me. I was like, yeah, I'll be a fashion designer. That'll be great. And then also I got the Kelley School of Business minor that came with it. And so I had a range of experiences, but the thing that worked so well for me is at Indiana University, where I graduated, the Kelley School of Business does an incredible job with recruitment. And so I made the most of those opportunities and I went to all the career fairs. And so by the time I was a junior in college, Gap Inc. recruited pretty heavily from there, and all the recruiters knew me by name. And so that's one piece of advice that I would give anyone is no matter what career you're going into, make sure that you're making the most of those opportunities to meet with recruiters, shake their hands, take the pamphlets, send the follow-up emails, and establish relationships early on. Because in my experience, the way that I've gotten jobs is not through applying online, it's through knowing somebody, through having a relationship. And then when I got to Gap Inc., I loved the company. San Francisco was awesome, but I was terrible at the job. Like I just wasn't good at it. And when you're not good at something, you don't like it. So I had gone through this 9-month rotational program called RMP. It stood for Retail Management Training Program. And the merchandising side was okay. Planning was not fun. It was basically finance. And then production was fine, but not my dream job. But through that 9-month training program and realizing that I loved the company, I was also exposed to other leaders. And so enter stage right, Bobby Silton. Bobby Silton at the time was the president of Gap Foundation. She came into my class and she told us about how she was leading a group of people to invest in the women and girls who make our clothes. And she talked about giving young people their first jobs. And it was like this lightning bulb went off of like, wait a minute. I can have a job where my job is to give back to people. Like, this is crazy. I totally want to be on this woman's team. And so I took a 15-minute conversation with her. I should say she took a 15-minute conversation with me. And I sort of pleaded my case of why I would kind of take anything just to be on her team because I was so inspired by her and the work she was doing. And lo and behold, there was an entry-level communications job. So I took that entry-level communications specialist job and I grew my career from there. So it wasn't the job that got me to Gap Inc. It was the company. I loved the company and I was able to network internally, find some mentors that had my back and were willing to take a chance on me, like Bobby, and then grow my career from there.
What advice would you give your girls? And obviously, they're maybe a little young to be entering corporate, though I don't know. I started my first business at 5, mostly thanks to my father, selling pumpkins throughout the neighborhood. Robin's Pumpkin Patch was the first business. But what advice would you give your girls as they're, right, maybe flash forward 10 years, right, heading into just post college or a gap year or whatever, of like, I think I want to do something. How do I get started, right? Because it's easy for you and I to say, okay, I met somebody, right? It's easy to look back, as Steve Jobs said in that famous grad talk at Stanford, look back to connect the dots, right? But how do you increase your luck surface area? How do you advise your girls to, if they want a career in corporate, in large organizations, network in a savvy way, ask at the right times, build influence in order to get ahead?
Well, first, I would say always call your mom, ask for advice. I'm right here, honey, anytime. But I think the 3 keys to success in any working environment are building your relationships, your reputation, and your resilience. There are a lot of things that go into those. But for relationships, it's expanding your network. And you had said, like, how do you do that? You say yes to everything, especially early in your career. Do you want to sit in on this meeting and take notes? Yes. Do you want to observe this special project? Yes. Would you mind pressing these buttons while I go on stage? Yes, I will do that. Because what you're doing is you are increasing your credibility and your ability to do different jobs. And two, you're making the people who are asking these questions believe that you can do anything. And so that leads to the second R, which is reputation. You are starting to build a reputation as a person who is confident and qualified and capable. So the reputation piece, I think there's some that's online and there's some that's offline. The online piece, so right now it's LinkedIn. I don't know what it'll be in 10 years when they're going to college or when they're starting to think about jobs. But for now it's LinkedIn. So having a really professional profile, thinking through how you want to shape the narrative of your own bio, making sure you have up-to-date information, connecting with everyone in your network so that you give the impression of having a wide network. That's important too. And then also that you're being a sponsor and advocate for your company, whatever that is, whether it's the school that you're in, whether it's, if you're in a corporate office. I think it's important to prove that you can be responsible and trusted for being an advocate for and a champion for the company. So that's about, I would say, a monthly post at a minimum. A picture of you in front of the office, a picture of you and the team out at a team building event. That's how you start to build your reputation. That's the online. I think the offline is you build your reputation through the results. So we could get in a whole conversation about goal setting and results and how you drive that. But I think the headline is deliver on the things that you said you were going to do and do a better job than people expected of you. That's how you build a great reputation. And then the last is resilience. And that, I mean, it's in my book, but it's not something that you can learn from a book. It's something you have to go through on your own, through the trials and tribulations and the experiences of simply existing in the world of, in my case, the corporate world, but it really in any job. It comes from experience. And one of the ways that you can build that arm of resilience is through I've always hated the phrase like fake it till you make it, because from my perspective, you don't have to fake anything if you're prepared. So preparation is my headline. If you like for this conversation, we didn't need to overthink it because I know you and we're already friends. And so I knew that minimal preparation was needed to have a great conversation. But in most cases, if I'm going to go up and do a presentation, I'm going to think in advance about what I'm going to say. I'm going to say it out loud 10 times. I'm going to be really thoughtful about the narrative that comes through, and I'm going to block time before and after so I can collect my thoughts and then also connect with people. That's preparation, and that's part of what creates resilience. But I want to ask you too. I mean, Robin, you live and breathe this every day too. What do you think are the keys to success?
I'm thinking about preparation, and I'll build on that. One of the things that I like to ask people is, have you worked service? Right. And that can be food service, hospitality. That can be kind of any kind of being in service business where you are dealing with strangers, ideally small numbers, right? Like of dollar figures. Because there's a quality of humility that comes from anyone who has ever worked service, right? I've never met somebody, I think even ever in my life, who is super entitled and profoundly ungrateful who has worked a service job for any length of time.
Yep.
And my first business was selling pumpkins at Robin Pumpkin Patch, but really the service job that formed me in many ways was in my late 20s at Robin's Cafe. So, right, folks listening, if they've been around a while, know it. But in 2016, with no restaurant experience, on 3 weeks' notice, I opened up a cafe. I ran it for 3 years and sold it on Craigslist. It was the process of serving all of the different stakeholders, right? The nonprofit within which we were running the cafe, my baristas, right? We had at most, I think, 15 employees on staff. My investors, right? I raised $40,000 from family and friends, right? All of these different stakeholders. And there's no better example of preparation than in restaurants, we call it mise en place, right? Everything in its place. Because when you are opening up the doors, and I remember, I think our first or maybe second day of opening, we had 2 employees and we didn't really have a menu yet. We had a menu, but we didn't have recipes. We didn't know how to make the food. We didn't know how much bread to order. And there was an event happening in our building. I think it was a church had rented out the theater. And so we were serving, 150 people in the space of 2 hours. And it was just a mad dash because none of the food was prepared. None of the, we were trying to prepare salads while also cook quinoa, while also toast the chicken that we would need to put on people's sandwiches, right? Things were not in its place such that we couldn't efficiently make the meals. We also didn't really know how to. So, right, eventually we just had to tell everyone there, and they were very forgiving. Like, we're going to shut down the menu. We can serve you coffee. Right, very trial by fire. That for that 2 years, 3 years of running Robin's Cafe was entirely trial by fire. But the mise en place, right? Today, my main business is Xander Media, right? We make videos. We do corporate storytelling, figuring out what the story is about a product launch or a company or a new arm of a business, right? A new project within a large company, and then turn it into videos that that company can use. And to make video, especially at the large scale, it's knowing who's going to be where, knowing exactly what's going to be captured before it's captured, knowing what the final asset is going to look like before you start, because that makes everything better, right? And there's a certain amount that you can fix in post production, but it's a limited amount, right? Even with
Yeah.
all of the AI tools and all of the generative AI that exists in the world today. And so, as you say, preparation, I would actually teach service, right, to my future kids. We'll see if my partner is willing, but I suspect she would be, of like, no, go get a service job, at least for, a few months, at least for a year, because did you get enough sleep last night, right? How well are you dressed, right? How confident are you feeling about yourself? And part of that is just the flip of like deciding that I am going to show up professionally. I'm going to show up well. I'm going to show up energetically. I mean, this role of enthusiasm, of energy, of positivity, right? I wrote an article recently on relentless optimism, right? Of like, it doesn't matter what's going on in the world, being optimistic is a superpower,
Mhm.
right? And so getting the practice of being prepared and of learning again and again, like, this is what it feels like when you're not prepared, this is what it feels like when you are, is so dichotomous that I think if I could teach everybody, a handful of things, that would certainly be in the top 10.
Without a doubt. And I 100% agree with you on the service jobs. I think being a waitress early in my career, so as a teenager, it would have been, it was the hardest job of my life. I mean, to this day, that was the hardest job I've ever had because I mean, there's the memory aspect of it, trying to remember everything and everyone's orders. There's the constant multitasking, dealing with different personalities, dealing with different attitudes, and like trying to remain positive and optimistic through a 9 hour shift of that is really
Yeah.
hard. So I'm totally with you there on the service piece, and I totally agree too that optimism is a superpower. I think optimism is my superpower, and I write about that in my book of just everybody has at least one superpower, and part of having a successful career is identifying what that superpower is and leaning into it.
Yep. Why the book? What is the book? What was the inspiration behind the book? And then I want to do a little bit of a deep dive as to the writing process, very selfishly, because it's
Oh
one of the
yeah,
art forms that I am a lifelong student of.
you and I could talk about that all day. So the book is Corporating. It's 3 ways to win at work. And I wrote it because I wanted to scale my mentorship. And what I mean by that is, I do think you get to a certain age or a certain title where you're fancy enough and you're old enough that people want to know how you did it and your career advice. And that started happening to me, especially as I became a VP. And I'm also really involved in my alma mater. So, as an alum of Indiana University, I stay really connected. And so, as a result of that, you're more visible. And I'm pretty visible on LinkedIn as well. And so, I started getting a lot of young people knocking on my door asking for career advice. And frankly, Robin, it was not sustainable. And so I had to figure out a way not to minimize my mentorship, but to scale it. And so this book is my answer to that. Also, just between you and me, I think it was a little bit of like corporate therapy for me because this is basically the first 10 years of my career. And you go through a lot in those 10 years. There's successes, but there's also a lot of stumbles. There's a lot of trials and tribulations. And so writing this book was very therapeutic for me in terms of taking able to take a step back and be like, I went through a lot, and a lot of it was awesome and a ton of it wasn't. And so being able to reflect on that and come from a place of gratitude for the experiences and for the lessons that I learned, and then to be able to put it in a format, as a writer, it's really fun to try and like go through the process of formatting and really trying to condense your thoughts into something that's digestible for a reader. And so for me, it was first and foremost about scaling mentorship, but then also about feeling like I had something that I could contribute meaningfully to the world and as part of my own legacy. And I do want to leave this world feeling like I contributed something positive. So this is one of my marks.
What's writing been like for you? Just the process of distilling your thinking into something permanent.
I love writing. So the writing has been first and foremost fun. And I will tell you, I wrote most of this book from the passenger seat of my car because I don't have time. I mean, I'm a working mom. And so I was told by one of my mentors early on, Gary Magenta told me, Mandy, you're going to have to find the 25th hour. And I found it in my car. And so I wrote most of this book from my car when I was doing birthday drop offs. I would take my kids in and I'd be like, oh, good, it's a drop off party. Bye bye, honey. Mwah, mwah, mwah. See you in 2 hours. I'll be in the driveway in my car if you need anything. Please don't need anything. And then I would go, I would write for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I would come back and pick them up. Same for Girl Scouts, same for swim, same for, I mean, any chance that I had, I was writing in my car. And then planes, airplanes was another one. I finished this book on my 8 hour flight back from Germany last summer. I remember because it was my 40th birthday. It was June 28th. And I finally was like, okay, I did it. Like you have enough dedicated time to sit and to think that it, eventually you chip away at it enough that you realize, oh, I have a book. So that
Cool.
part was
Yeah.
really fun.
Parents in my life have told me, like, when you have kids, you just find a way, right? If it's important,
Yeah.
you just do it. And right, the prioritization of time becomes much more strict, but also that becomes a necessary forcing function.
Absolutely. I believe that I am an inherently lazy person, to be totally honest with you, but I am very driven by deadlines and deliverables. And I think having children, it forces you to be motivated because you can't just do nothing. You can't have a day where you wake up on a Saturday and you're like, I'm just going to catch up on Netflix, or like, I'm just going to leisure around. Maybe I'll do a load of laundry. No, they get up, you get up. You have to feed these people. Like there's a human relying on you. And so my inherent laziness has been completely wiped away the past 9 years. Well, by choice, I chose this life. I chose to be a mom, but also it is every single day you find motivation because these children are relying on you. So that was a big part of the writing process too, was finding those little pockets of windows when I could think and have it to myself. And frankly, I think it's fun having something for yourself, whether you're a writer or a crocheter or a quilter, having something creative in your life. A musician's another one that you can go to fuel you in the other areas of your life, I think is really important.
The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss was important for me for a couple of years when I was just getting started as an entrepreneur. And I remember he recommended in that book having something outside of your day job, or, in his case, in many cases, for me in my life, the entrepreneurial thing that I was building that was, as you say, something that fuels you. Or for me, it's always been something that I can go and celebrate, even if I am feeling like, we haven't sold any tickets to the Snafu conference, or, everyone hates my newsletter, or Xander Media is struggling with a really difficult client, or whatever it is that's going poorly. I can go over to this other area of my life, which for me has always been physical practice, has always been the gym, or handstands, or gymnastics, or ballet, or capoeira, or surfing. But the physical practice being, here I'm celebrating, here I'm feeling good, here I'm seeing progress.
Yeah. And in the midst of writing this book, part of why it took so long, so it took over 2 years, is because I got distracted writing the musical version of the book. And so now we have corporating the book. There is also corporating the musical. There are 3 songs that I've now produced and put online in partnership with a wonderful composer, Eric Shackney. And I mean, I kind of just went with it. There's this also an amazing book, if we're talking about books here, called Time, Talent, Energy, that one of my old bosses, Sarah Mirren, recommended to me back from the Gap Inc. days. And it talks about how we have limited time, talent, and energy. And oftentimes, even though it's not part of your plan for the day, if your energy is flowing with something, go towards that. Unless you have some insane, like urgent deadline or deliverable, follow that energy because you're going to produce a better product. And for me, I think the book is better because I wrote this musical version. And so now when I'm going, so next week I'm going to head to Indiana and speak to students. I've got several speaking engagements lined up about the book. And for some of them, I'm going to sing because it's part of the musical expression of the message
Amazing.
that I'm trying to give. And honestly, Robin, like it's so hard to hold. It's not just Gen Z, which is why I'm not going to say it's a Gen Z thing. all of us are so distracted all the time. It's really hard to focus and to keep attention. And so music is one way, unusual as it may be, to keep people's attention and to say, I'm not just going to tell you about the 3 ways to win at work. I'm going to sing it for you too. So listen
Amazing. Yeah.
up.
I feel like if you can keep the attention of, a room full of, I don't know, 5-year-olds or 13-year-olds, right? You can keep the attention
Yeah.
of anybody. I was just in Alabama for a client for a film project, um, associated with the Department of Education in Alabama. And the winner of this year's Teacher of the Year award for the state of Alabama was there. Her name's Katie. We interviewed her on camera. Um, and I was just, I mean, she's taught for 20 years, everything from, I think, kindergarten to, ninth graders, maybe even beyond. But the enthusiasm, the energy, the willingness to just like be ridiculous in order to capture the attention of the people in front of her was so evident,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm part of a group called Mic Drop Workshop, and it's led by Lindsay Buccarado. I'm sure I'm saying it wrong. Sorry, Lindsay. And Jess Ekstrom. And so they started this group called Mic Drop Workshop. We all get together once a month and we work on like something different. It was today, and we worked on facial expressions. And so the activity that we did with a small group was tell a story. First time, do it with monotone and no facial expressions. Second time, tell the story over the top, clown, like go really big, something that feels so ridiculous. And the third time, tell it like you normally would. And what's funny is that we went through it. My group had 4 people. Every single one of us liked number 2 better than 1 or 3. And the reason is
Yep.
because when people are emoting and they're expressive and they use their faces, it's more fun to watch. It's more entertaining, it's more engaging. And so that's why you see the 5-year-olds getting really excited about, storytelling and the whispers, and then you get loud and then you get soft. And so it's the same when you get on a stage. And I think musical integration is one of those ways to keep people interested.
Yeah. I routinely, any chance I get to hire my colleague Zach Fish, who's the producer, the technical producer at Responsive Conference and also at the upcoming Snafu Conference. We've worked together on and off. They're a freelancer for us, but if I can work with Zach, I absolutely will, because of course he's great at his job. Of course he's great at managing all of the technical sides of producing a conference or an experience or an event. But I get on Zoom and it is just, he's a ball of positive energy and delight and super capable and confident, but also just pleasant to be with.
Yeah.
And so, as somebody who is making a decision of who do I want to hire, I routinely find myself being like, if I can work with Zach, I want to work with Zach because I feel better. Surprise, surprise. It is no surprise. Zach teaches a weekly class for kids on acrobatics in Berkeley, California, right? Like, Zach is a teacher. He is used to engaging this audience, right? And
Mhm.
so, when I think about corporating, when I think about who are you hiring, who are you choosing to promote,
Mhm.
this being enthusiastic, being positive, being over the top, even being big
Mhm.
energetically, right? Which is not a God given, gift
Mhm.
necessarily. It can also be learned, right? I mean, you have musical instruments in your background. It can be learned like anything else could be learned.
Yeah, absolutely. I think about that a lot in terms of people showing up authentically and what that means, because oftentimes the person who is the loudest is the one who gets to talk the most, but the person who's the quietest is the one who maybe has the best ideas. And so, how do you exist in this world where both of those things are true? Especially because one of my daughters is more quiet than the other. And so, encouraging authenticity is really important, but also teaching the skill of using your voice loudly when you need to. So that's something that's on my mind. The other thing that you brought up for me was, part of this book launch is connecting with students, because the book that I wrote is really meant to be for people who are about to enter the corporate world, or for people who are newly there and early in their
Yep.
careers. And so, in terms of the writing process, I purposely made it 100 pages. So it is 100 pages to the T, because I wanted to make sure that it was like to the point, practical advice, getting through it, hold your attention. And then 2, I'm excited, but also admittedly nervous to connect with students, because it's just been a minute since I've been a student. And I know that the world has changed so much since I was in college. So part of what I recommend to people and the advice I'm trying to live myself is get to know your audience, like really get in there and figure out who they are. So part of what this pre-book launch tour is for me is going to universities, including my alma mater, to getting to know the students and understanding the environment in which they are learning and like the day-to-day experiences that they have. So for what it's worth too, I think in the spirit of experimentation and learning about the corporate world, one of the best things that you can do for your career is if you have a vision of where you think you want to go in your career, try to find a way to get there before you're there. Like go meet with those people and shake their hands and have coffee with them and sit in those seats and walk those halls and see what that feels like for you. But getting to know your audience is true in communications, and I think it's also true in your career.
You said something interesting about if you have a vision for where you want to be. What about if you don't? What about if you don't know what you want to do professionally? You don't know what you want to become or what that next step in your career is or business that you want to build or anything else.
But you want to have success? Is that kind of the thought?
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
if you're mentoring someone and they're not sure that they want to stay at your company
yeah,
or be a stay-at-home mom or right, like
yeah,
there's so much abundance in the world,
yeah.
right? But as you say, our attention is so distracted. How do you help somebody decide what they want to go do, to try, to become next?
As a mentor, you ask a ton of questions. I do think that your job and your role as a mentor is to be encouraging and make connections, but first and foremost, to ask questions and come from a place of curiosity, especially if someone is struggling. So, in this case, so it would be like struggling with what do I want to do with my life? Like, what kind of career do I want to have? And so, the questions that you ask, and I'm sure GPT could be very helpful in this regard, but as a mentor, to say things like, well, what brings you joy? Like, what gives you energy? What's the dream? Like you're 60 years old, you're starting to contemplate retirement. What does that look like for me, I have a financial advisor, and so she forced us, me and my husband, to think about like what does retirement look like for you, and then you create a work backwards plan of like, well, okay, what does it take to get there, to have a condo in New Zealand and to be able to take your entire family on an annual vacation? Like these are real things for me that I want in my future. And so I think by asking questions, you're probing people to think about okay, what brings me joy? What am I good at? What do I want my future to look like? Because the truth is that if none of those things are important to you, like those physical, tangible items, and you're okay with just sort of like getting by paycheck to paycheck, just a very different life. But if you say, I want to have security. Okay, great. A corporate job is good for something like that. I want to work on a team. I really like being around people. Okay, great. Another reason why corporate might be a good fit for you. I really want to have a job where I'm interacting with people every day, but no 2 days are the same. Okay. So as a mentor, you're going through this checklist of like, if I ask enough of the right questions, I can help steer this person on a potentially right path. And then I can make connections for them, whether it's, well, based on what you said, it sounds like something that's smaller would be a good fit for you. Or based on what you said, it sounds like remote work is going to be really important to you. And then you start to connect those dots of these companies or these people that I want to connect you to. So you can start to have conversations with people who are in those jobs or in those companies. I will say though, oftentimes you just don't know what you don't know. And it's a matter of trial and error. So it's building in moments in your network to ask your parents' friends, your friends of friends, hey, can I just like shadow you for a half day? Can I come and just like be a fly on the wall and see what it's like to be you? Because you said it, we don't know what we don't know. And there are so many opportunities and things out there that we just aren't even aware of. Even you and me, like we're 20 years into our careers or whatever, and there's so much that untapped potential, things that we don't know about. And I think staying curious is one thing, but also like doing the legwork of asking the questions and meeting with different people is part of you know the journey of figuring out what else is out there.
Yeah. Something I want to come back to, you're talking about being a musician and kind of seemingly, from my stance, unapologetically performing, even as you're talking about the corporate world of work.
Mhm,
That's a seeming dichotomy. I know a lot of people
mhm.
who are mucky mucks at name brand companies who, even if they have a side hustle singing in a band, would never admit that in their professional workplace. And here you are promoting your book with a musical number, three musical
Yeah.
numbers, right? where does the confidence to do that come from, or what is it that you are, right? You come from a theater background, sure, right? I taught myself gymnastics and ballet in my 20s, but I'm not necessarily going to be, I mean, maybe I should do it more often, come on stage at a conference and do a backflip or talk about circus if it's not, relevant to the topic at hand, right? So the mixing of that personal and professional in a corporate environment is something that lots of people are hesitant to do. What's your recommendation about that?
Well, first of all, if you did a backflip coming onto the stage, I will never forget it. I think you should do that. And I really hope that you do. Don't hurt yourself though, because I am no medic. Um, Merging the personal and professional is hard. And I didn't always feel this way. Like I could bring my full self to work. It drives me crazy when people say that because so many of us just don't have that luxury of bringing our full self to work. And I think it's a combination of strategic choices and luck that got me here. And so working backwards, I'll start with current day, which is I work for a Fortune 500 company called Prologis, which has been incredibly supportive of me personally and professionally. And it started at the top. So in my first year there, it was 2021, and I remember we were planning for a big conference. We call it our global retreat. And I was on a call with our, I mean, pretty senior leaders, and they were kind of joking around about like, oh, maybe at the conference we should all bust out our guitars and start a band. So they had previous relationships. You could tell they already knew each other and they had some musical skills. And I mean, we're talking some of the most senior leaders of this company, and they said, oh no, we couldn't do it because we don't have a singer. But anyway, let's move on. And I was like, I sing. I'm actually a singer. And like, no, no, no. We need someone who's like, a singer and who has a lot of confidence and can really do it. And I said, no, you guys, I sing. Like, I really can. And so that was just luck that that conversation took place because now I'm the lead singer of our band. Like, we have a company band and it is so much fun. We perform a couple times a year. It is just the highlight for me of the year to get together with these guys and to be able to perform musically in front of colleagues who, by the way, love it. And after the first performance that we did in 2022, our CEO called me over and he was like, that was really amazing. And honestly, from that moment forward, was interested and invested in me and my career, like to the point where after I came out with corporate and cabaret songs, I would send it to him because he took a genuine interest and he would ask me after meetings, like, hey, Mandy, how's the music coming? So it's a merging of luck, of being around the right people to support in that kind of environment, but then also getting to a place, whether it's age or whether it's a certain level of my career, where I felt like I could be more forthcoming in who I am and the types of things that give me light. Um, Going back though, it was not always that way, and that's part of why I wrote this book, is because I think it can be really hard when you first get into the corporate world. You feel like you have to kind of like be this sort of corporate robot and know the language and the jargon and say the right things and, oh, not speak up, don't talk over that person, am I invited to this meeting, was I copied on this email? Like, you're kind of figuring out all these funky nuances of working in a corporate world. And I think it's hard not to dull your personality and not to dull the things that make you you, because you are trying to blend in. So part of this book is like, how do you blend in while also standing out and coming forward as your true self? So I'm here to tell you it's not easy and that I didn't get it right the first time, but that as I started to tiptoe my way into showing my true self, all these other opportunities emerged. And so I think the advice I would give is to not hide it. You don't have to shout it from the rooftops, but you don't have to hide it. Everybody's a human, whether it's music or something else, there is somebody else on your team or in your company who shares your interests and excitement. So weaving it into casual conversations is a good place to start. And then the other thing I would say is make sure that you are working for people who advocate for you. So I have been very lucky to have mostly amazing bosses, and I've had some terrible bosses. Like, I've had the range of both. And you take what works from the good, and you also learn a lot from the bad ones. Like, when I'm senior, I'm not going to be like that. But the good ones, including my boss right now, I mean, she's the one who came up with the idea to begin with. We were at my 2-year anniversary lunch, and she said to me, you have so many talents. Have you ever thought about writing a book? And I was
Hmm.
like, you know, I haven't, but now that you mention it, I know exactly what I would write about. And this was the book. I went home and I wrote the outline for corporating and the 3 ways to win at work, which, by the way, were actually 2 ways to begin with. I had relationships and I had reputation, but a mentor to me was like, you really need a third R. And together we came up with the idea of resilience as the third R. So it's a combination of come forward, try to be your true self in tiptoeing into that conversation, and then also make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people who support you and who are going to promote you and help you see things in yourself that maybe you don't even know exist yet.
Hmm. Let's talk about resilience, right? How do you get over rejection?
Rejection is so hard. And I mean, nobody knows rejection like theater people, because if you've been to auditions, so I lived in New York for 2 years and I was pursuing music nearly full time. And so a lot of Broadway auditions, a lot of rejections along the way. And I think it actually goes back to the very first thing that you and I talked about, which is how to coach your children on self worth. And surrounding yourself with people who love and support you is huge, whether it's your chosen family or the one that you were born with. I also think that having a really strong sense of self and self worth is critical for surviving a corporate world or a theater world. It doesn't matter. But like intrinsically knowing that you are worthy of that role or of that job has been huge for me in being able to overcome some of the rejection and the resilience. And then I also think like creating the right conditions is really important for yourself. So I'll tell you a quick story. I'm 11 years old. It's the first play I've ever auditioned for. It was Will Rogers Follies, and some girl had to drop out. So Mary Rogers, I still remember my solo. I'll sing it for you sometime. But I remember my aunt Debbie was in the play. It was a little local production of Will Rogers Follies, and she left a voicemail in my answering machine saying, "Hi, Mandy. And mom, wondering if Mandy would be interested in coming to audition. This girl had to drop out, but we would need her to come in tonight and to sing for the director." And I remember standing outside in the freezing cold, pitch black dark in front of that theater, and the director saying, "Can you sing something for me?" And I looked at my mom, and the only thing that was in my head was, "Hold on, Wilson Phillips, hold on for one more day." And I just like belted it out to this director, and I got the part. But it was a combination of having the right connections. And then in terms of resilience, we talk about like having the conditions to succeed. I knew someone who was already in the play. I would have never known about that opportunity otherwise. My mom said yes, she was willing to do it. And then also, once I got there, there was somebody who was willing to take a chance on me. So, this director who didn't know me at all. So, part of resilience is the upfront of having the support system and the self worth to succeed. But a big part of it too is going through the experiences and trying to create conditions for success.
Awesome.
What was your first
Um,
show, by the way? What was the first thing that you did?
my first, one more time, first
Your
show.
first show, yeah. Like stage production?
I don't even know.
Really?
Honestly, like, so no, I have no idea. I've never been asked that question. I'd have to think about it really carefully. Probably, so I walked into a gymnastics gym at 17, right? And my life changed. I'd been a cross country runner for 10 years, burnt out of cross country after just being told run faster, run faster, run faster. Called gymnastics gyms. I don't even remember to this day why gymnastics, but the old Yellow Pages phone book pulled up all of the gymnastics gyms in the North Bay of the Bay Area, in Sonoma County where I grew up, and there was one which is still around today. I just visited a month or two ago, called Redwood Empire Gymnastics, that said we have an adult class, right? So first experience with like cold calling rejections, right? No, 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 we don't have classes for someone like you unless you're pre-Olympics or calling for, your 5-year-old. Um, and then one said, we do have an adult class twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7 to 9. Come on down. We'd love to see you. That then led to juggling and circus and fencing and capoeira and rock climbing and right, just this Cambrian explosion of an awareness that there were so many different types of movement that I could study. Went to college a couple of years later, right, a year and a half later, and walked into a ballet studio. I was wearing corduroy and like a button-up shirt, and I didn't have ballet shoes. And he was bless him, Eric Skinner, my first ever ballet instructor, right? I'm there. I'm the only guy alongside the instructor with like 5 or 6 women. It wasn't like a pre-pro ballet class. It was a bunch of very academic college students at Reed College who happened to all have been former professional ballerinas pre-college, right? And I'm like there, never having stood at a bar in my life before. Don't know what a plie is. He was like, well, maybe, wear some dance clothes next time you come to class. But like, and I kept coming. And so probably that year, right, either at the end of the semester or at the end of the year was my first show, right? Was like an internal to Reed College production. The biggest production that I was ever a part of, this was 10 years later, more, maybe 2013, something like that, was as an acrobat with the San Francisco Opera, which was Les Troyens. So it was a one show with the opera. There were 6 of us acrobats. There were 200 people on stage, world-renowned operatic singers, War Memorial Opera House in front of 3,000 audience members. We had 10 shows. Each of the shows was 6 hours. I think 4 hours, but they were long. We had like 13 or 15 costume changes, right? So lots of different characters on and off and on and off and on and off, backflips on stage. Yeah, and that was wild.
That's amazing. I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah. I want to be respectful of your time. I know we're heading into the close.
Mhm.
But I can't not ask about technology. And
Yeah.
as you're mentoring people at Prologis, as you're thinking about your girls and the world they're growing up in, what is your relationship to AI? What is your relationship to the evolving world of work as things are changing? And as, again, speaking of Cambrian explosion, of technological tools that enable work, but
Mhm.
also, right, are replacing humans, are especially entry level jobs, right, are changing substantially. What are you thinking about, and how are you thinking to support people using but not being used by these tools?
I never ask my girls the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because I think that the jobs that exist today may not exist in the future. So instead, I think what me and a lot of other parents are focused on is more like, what are you interested in? Like, are you interested in plants? Are you interested in how stuff gets built? Are you interested in like those are the types of questions that I think are really important to consider for the future generations because things are changing so fast and the job market will look very different. In terms of how I'm thinking of coaching my team, I mean, I've got an amazing team. They're very capable, they're very competent, they all work really well together, and they're all very invested in tools and technology. We just have to be in our line of work, whether it's digital signage as you walk in the door, or the technology to get a global webinar to happen, or the technology to send out an email and to get the data. So, being a very data driven team, you are reliant on technology to provide that data and those great tools and resources to create videos, for example. So the way that I think about it is adopt early, approach it with a sense of cautious optimism. And especially now, I mean, I think a year or two ago, it was one of those things where like get on the train or it's going to leave without you. Like the train has left the station when it comes to AI. Like you got a lot of catching up to do at this point if you haven't already integrated it into the day to day way that you work. Don't be afraid of the technology. Embrace the technology and find ways to do your job better. Like for us, we use it as a brainstorm partner. I have a bot that I use to help me be more efficient in the way that I think about how to schedule my week. Like these are things where it is not replacing my job, it is enhancing my job, but it's only enhancing it because I embraced it from day one. So my best advice to people is just truly to embrace it and to come from a place of curiosity and not fear, because fear isn't going to help us at all. The only thing that we're going to be able to do is to find ways to integrate it and be more smart and hopefully a little bit smarter than it is so that we can continue on our journey of these careers.
I feel like that, as an optimistic note, is a positive way to end. Um, as ever, you are so enthusiastic and so good-willed, right? And so it so does not surprise me that you've had the successes you've had, Mandy.
And so,
Um, where can folks listening and watching go to learn more about you, about your work, and about corporating?
Well, Snafu Conference is on March 5th, and I will be speaking there. We're going to be talking about how rejection sucks, but there are lots of ways to overcome it. So, more to come there. That's one way for sure. And then also, mandymooney.com has my author and speaking information. On LinkedIn, it's Mandy Mooney. And also, if you're interested in my music, it's also under Mandy Mooney. I'm not hiding, I have no stage name, it is my name. So, check out Mandy Mooney wherever you stream your music.
Great. Thank you very much. It's so lovely to sit down, and I can't wait to welcome you on stage at the first inaugural Snafu conference.
Thank you so much, Robin. And also, thank you so much for being a mentor to me throughout the book writing process. So, we didn't talk a ton about that, but I do want to give you some props for everything that you've done to provide me with guidance on the process, kind of the ins and outs of promoting a book. Like, you've been very generous with your time and with your knowledge, and I don't take that for granted. So, thank you.
It's a pleasure. I'm so excited to see it out in the world.
All right, Robin. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye.
Hey there, it's Robin again. One last thing before you go, and that is the Snafu newsletter. If you've enjoyed this conversation, you will likely enjoy a weekly newsletter which contains an article about influence and persuasion, an exercise to try, and three things I've loved from the last week. You can join the newsletter, it's free, comes out every Saturday at joinsnafu/newsletter. And I look forward to seeing you there.